hypnosis. It's being recorded. It was meant to be a session, a question answer on regress to cause hypnosis, but we decided, because the inner child, for those of us who are experienced in working with regress to cause, the inner child tends to be the crux of everything that we do. And it's a subject that people go off, they study on their own with no really credible training, and it can get very messy when that happens. So tonight I thought I'd bring on Daniel, Wendie and Beryl, who I feel are the world leading experts in this topic, and a chance for them to explain things their way, how they do it, and a chance for you to ask questions. And for those of you amongst us who do not understand the need to go back to the IC, who feel it's re-traumatizing and it's unnecessary, this is going to be an excellent opportunity for you to or can we just make sure we're all muted, please? I'm not the host, I can't mute you all. So excellent chance for you to ask questions. I've even got them myself. Things come up with my clients even now that I think, oh, that's one for the girls, or my fairy godmothers, as I like to call them. That's one for them. Let's look at it. Let's work on it. So this is what this evening's all about, really, is to have deeper education on this subject, deeper clarification. So when you go away with it, hopefully your questions are all answered and you're ready with the next stage of your training, where you want to go from here with it, you know. So Danielle, I'm going to let you kick off because you're one of the very few males on the call.
I wonder why, you know, usually we sometimes it feels like I would be calling for equality. And anyway, so basically, yeah, inner child work. It happened that, as Jacquelyn was saying, we wanted to make it some sort of a like Q&A about a training course, and the idea popped up, and it's like it was Wendie's idea actually to pop up, you know, the roots, actually the basics, or the baseline of any regression to cause work, which is inner child work. Some people, they call it ICT, informed child technique, or some people they call it inner child therapy. Whichever thing it is, it's quite interesting, quite powerful, and to tell you the truth, yeah, as I was saying, you know, in the last meeting, I discovered after a while that you don't need regression to cause to work with inner child. Sometimes you reparent that child just by talking to that person, and waking hypnosis. We call it waking hypnosis. I don't, you know, let's call it waking state. I don't know. They're not sleep. Let's call it a state. Whatever you're gonna call it. Everybody knows me. I coined the word homosnosis. So basically, you can call it whatever you need to call it, whatever you need to do to reparent that child. Um, it popped up actually another idea today, that what is the inner child? Let's put it this way: most of us here who ever been trained with hypnosis, we know that the subconscious mind is likened to a 4-year-old child. Yeah, so you're reparenting your own subconscious mind, basically. So this is where everything started. This is where the programming started. We tell, you know, that child that your parents are victims of their own programming. What about you being the parent of another child that you are victim of your own programming? So basically, I guess, you know, Wendie and Beryl, they have plenty of more things than I do to share here. So let's kick off.
Yeah, let's do a little few house rules though before we go on, because I am known as Miss Trunchbull here in the UK. Just to introduce myself, lots of faces that I don't recognise. My name is Jacquelyn Haley, and I started a group called the UK Women in Hypnosis 4.5 years ago, here in the UK, obviously, just to bring women in the UK together so we could create a more of a secure place to talk amongst us. And that's kind of got my face better known, I suppose, throughout the UK. I won't say industry, the field of hypnosis in the UK. But just to let you know, the chat bar, we do have a chat bar here. And those of you, most of you are au fait with using Zoom. It should be on your computer screen along the bottom line. You can use your chat to write any questions. Most of you we will be on mute throughout the evening whilst the speaker is talking. If you'd like to ask a question, you can raise a hand, I believe. There's a reaction button. You can raise a hand and you can ask your question if it doesn't get seen in the chat. And we'll unmute you and you can come and ask the question. But first of all, I'd like to start with Wendie. Wendie Weather. Wendie Weather, you have got the weather in Canada.
Yes, I'm on the west coast
of
Canada. I'm actually way on the west coast of Canada because I'm on Vancouver Island. So, and we are enjoying a beautiful hot spell. Unfortunately, it happened all at once. We went from winter to summer. And so I'm trying to acclimatize right now. So I'm showing up completely casual today. It's casual Monday for me. So my name is Wendie Weber. My name is, you'll probably notice, is spelled with an IE, and my website is tribeofhealers.com. And I focus exclusively on regression to cause therapeutic hypnosis, and inner child work is really the core work of regression to cause. And that essentially is because most of the issues that clients come to see us about have their roots in childhood. So the focus of regression to cause is basically to resolve a client's issue at the point that it got started, just simply because it's easier on the client and it's easier on the therapist as well. And so the whole premise of that is to pull the roots out of the issue, and then there's nothing there to feed into the symptoms.
Wendie, the question I want to start off with you then, as you've just probably answered some of that question, is why regress to cause? But more importantly, why do you feel that a lot of therapists will do literally that when they hear regress to cause and they feel it's a re-traumatization of the client? I'll leave that one with you.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's a common objection. And of course, we're all victims of our programming. So, I mean, when I did my first hypnosis certification, we were told just point blank, regression, don't go there. You know, it's dangerous. You can do a lot of damage. You don't need it. You can do a lot with a good progressive relaxation. Well, you know, it took me about 10 years to get over that little suggestion from a person in authority. But when I went into hypnosis in the first place, I wasn't interested in hypnosis. I was interested in regression. And so I just kept following that thread until I got the answers that I needed to be able to facilitate regression in a very, you know, in a responsible and an effective way. So I'm kind of, you know, all those objections have gotten really old for me. You know, I get it, but really it's just, you know, it's a suggestion that was given usually through an authority figure who didn't know what they were talking about. And I will tell you, I've mopped up a lot of mess from people who were supposedly qualified, and they were not. So yes, you can do damage with regression, but you can do damage with direct suggestion if you don't know what you're doing. So I guess my stand is know your stuff. You know, in Canada, we have in British Columbia, we have you know, the Liquor Control Board, and they used to run a bunch of ads about, you know, drinking and driving, and they had this saying, it was know your limit and stay within it. And I think that really fits well for you know, for therapists as well. You know, if you've only got basic training and you know, you've been taught how to do direct suggestion and you've been taught how to do imagery, then stay in your zone, stay in your lane. And in order to facilitate regression, you need to go and take some advanced training for that. But I will say that don't just stop with the basics, because your clients are going to regress whether you want them to or not. And what I found was that 99% of the clients that came to me were not simple fixes. They came in, they'd already tried everything else. They'd already been to the doctors, and they'd done the, you know, the acupuncture and the nutritional stuff, and they already tried everything else. They'd been, you know, I got a lot of medical cases. They'd already been down that route. And the one thing that they hadn't looked at was what's the the psychological, the emotional component that's behind these symptoms. And so regression is the solution when you're dealing with an emotional issue. You can use other techniques to manage the symptoms, but if your goal is to get a lasting result and to resolve that issue for good, then you need to find out where it came from. A metaphor I really like is just the one of the, the dandelion weeds in your lawn. You can go out there and you can cut the lawn every week, and the dandelions are going to be back next week because because you haven't resolved the underlying problem. And the way to really get rid of a dandelion for good is to dig down and pull out the roots. And so that's what we do. Did I answer your question?
Unmute.
And the other question, I'm going to perhaps aim it to Beryl to take it a lot deeper, is the fear of regression? And you answered it brilliantly, Wendie. And it's let's take it deeper, because I have seen, like many of you, in lots of forums, aren't we? I don't tend to get involved today, but when we look at the sheer kind of venom that comes out against regress to cause, or the sarcasm and the things that come with it, Beryl.
Well, I'm a wordsmith. I love words. And let's look at that word regression. It's a negative word. And Richard Bandler changed it to timeline therapy.
All right,
whatever it takes to go back and, find out the perceptions that child had at the time. And to realize now, as an informed adult, looking back at it, now looking at it through your more adult eyes and realizing that nothing happened, because if it had happened, you wouldn't be here right now. Says she at 73, who's totally her natural child, as Eric Byrne would have called it. Be your assertive natural child rather than aggressive. Regression in itself is a negative word. I mean, who wants to regress? You're not going to do that regression thing, are you, Beryl? Oh, no. We might do some timeline. Oh, okay. Because they don't know what timeline is, but it's exactly the same thing. Find out what the ISE is, bring in the adult you to, and maybe your therapist as well, holding your hand, whatever your army is, to inform that child now, and that it's past, it's finished. And with that information, go through it, go until it's like, oh, okay, now I understand. Yeah. And to do whatever's needed and to that person, that situation, or whatever, go. Let's face it, every what client is coming for is that they are re-traumatizing themselves every time they make that movie of that spider or that shark or whatever, that's happening, or the anxiety that's making them bite their fingernails. They're re-traumatizing themselves all the time, isn't that right? That's why they're there. So let's go back, see it differently, feel it differently, hear it differently, talk to yourself differently, and know that it's okay. And I don't need to keep going back to that habit that I formed then. One of the best examples of this is Jerry Kine's video on alcoholism with George. But it wasn't anything to do with alcohol, which is what all the other people he had dealt with, in hospitals and clinics and Betty Ford stuff. It was actually going back as far as 5 years old, and Ruth was seeing his parents taken away by police. And that trauma was what was re-traumatizing himself to the point where he carried it.
To stand up to Vladimir Putin.
Alcohol.
If he succeeds,
We are re-traumatizing ourselves. So let's visit that and let the child see it through his more informed child eyes. And hey, it's wonderful. It's changed my life. doing that when I was 33. That's 40 years ago. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time.
Is thanks, Beryl. Thanks. I think from my perspective, it's definitely more, not so much more education, but please just listen. I mean, Wendie did an excellent talk with Alex Smith about 18 months ago. Was that Wendie? About 18 months ago. And I think Alex had come on the call. He might even confess this himself. And to perhaps be an awkward, as Stephen Blake would call an AB, an awkward bastard. And Wendie knows his subject upside down, inside out, and back to front. And you had a very, what I would like to call, an emotionally intelligent response to him, and you had the answers for him, and it completely changed his outlook on it. He left the call being, yeah, I get it. I do get it.
We did have an agreement at the beginning of the call. He said he was going to play devil's advocate and come at me, and I said, bring it.
Yeah.
And so he did, and he asked some fabulous questions. He really did. Yeah.
What I'll do in the UK Women in Hypnosis, I will share that interview. It is quite a long interview, but I suggest you get a notebook and pen and make notes from it, because it was absolutely outstanding. And even though I'd been through the training with Wendie and Beryl and done numerous study myself, I made a lot of notes from that interview. It was very, very interesting. Now, we've just been on a call with the World Hypnosis group we were in earlier?
World Collaboration.
What was it called?
World Collaboration.
The World Collaboration. Again, another brilliant group that meet every week at 5 o'clock online on Zoom, and we discuss various topics. Another good link I'll share with you. But Daniel, you brought up a great topic of conversation that was looking at the parent, the reparenting the child. But you also brought up something which really made me think, is when the child is involved in reshaping the adult. And we looked at the example that you gave, which I shared with Wendie later, was when you have someone who's had a relatively good childhood, they remember the great things, they had a lot of love around them, went on to have a good marriage, brought up the children, things were pretty hunky-dory, life was good. And then the marriage breaks down, the parents die, the children leave home, the female, maybe I'm using the female as an example because I mostly work with women, is now going through in their 50s, a time when we're menopausal, and they have to learn to be a new way.
Okay.
Why have I just chose the male to answer that, to direct that question to? But you brought it up in the thing, and it's like dealing with that child that's been lost. It's not the adult that's abandoned. The child is technically lost.
Actually, the child is never lost. It's being locked.
Locked, yeah.
Really. That's locked. It's not lost. You will never lose your inner child. Basically, you just lock it. I guess I missed to introduce myself. My name is Daniel Ghanime. I'm just here in Beirut, Lebanon, in a virtual furnace because I had to turn off my fan now. So basically, it's boiling hot, and in a second, it will be feeling like an Indonesian prison. Anyway, so that being said, inner child. When it comes to locking that inner child, one of the major things you need to know about regression to cause itself, it's not a therapy. So basically, you use that to go back to those traumatic events. You go back even to the time where that child was loved, because most of the time they don't know that they were loved. They have forgotten those moments that they were loved, they were safe, and this is quite interesting because some of those adults, grown-ups, old people even, they have forgotten their childhood, or they never lived their childhood, to the point they lost that child, and sometimes they made it hold all the burden. It's like as if it's because of you I'm here. It's because of your stupidity I'm here. And when they address their own inner child, they talk about it as if it's like someone from the neighborhood that made them do things they shouldn't have, and due to that lack of experience or whatever, They ended up in a ditch. But the problem is, actually, it's not a problem; it's a solution. Once they find a way to reach out, and they say, and they understand actually that this inner child, them as a child, has been locked in a prison for a crime they didn't commit. And even if they did commit, any penitentiary, any, I don't know what to call it, prison for the kids, it will not hold them for like 30, 40 years. It's impossible. No one would pay that. And then they understand that it wasn't the fault of that child. Basically, that child didn't have any other alternative to change that fate that they had to be in. So let's put it this way. If you're talking about a family where those children were orphaned at a very early age and they had to take care of each other during the war, let's say. Basically, we're living here in an area where this is quite common. They lost their childhood. They think that childhood is something for the weak. They don't play anymore. And at the age of 8, they had to take care of something they called business, maybe selling tomatoes or potatoes on the street, or, shoe shining, or whatever it is. And they have to take care of their other siblings, which they are younger. So you can imagine that 8-year-old father taking care of those 3-year-old kids. And then they lose that childhood. They grow up and they think that childhood is weakness. That feeling and being emotional, it's weakness. Loving is weakness. And basically, they cannot love because they don't know what love is. They have a different definition for that. And this is where the thing happens when you regress them back to where they were loved. And sometimes it's in the womb. Because they couldn't, feel the love of a mother or a father before they got, shot or exploded or whatever happened. They felt that love. And they cry. Because they know what love means. And now you tell me, okay, is that even possible? Yeah, why not? We're not talking rationality here. It's not logic. It's not analysis. It's nothing. It's not the conscious mind here. We're talking about the subconscious mind, which is a 4-year-old child itself, as I said. So basically, that child needs a parent, and that parent is yourself. So reparenting your own as a child and being that ideal parent that you missed your whole life can make a whole lot of difference. If the parent is, I don't know, so aggressive and unlivable with, and you need an ideal parent, you are your ideal parents. If you lost a mother that you didn't see, she died while she was delivering, and you need that, they can create an ideal parent. So basically, that child needs a parent. In any way, they need a parent. So you will say, what kind of difference that will make? It will make a whole lot of difference, because they know they will never be alone, ever. Even though if the whole universe collapses, that parent will not be able to leave them, because this is them. So it's the last face they will be able to see or feel in this universe. So it's like an eternal parent or an eternal parenthood for that child who was oppressed, repressed, traumatized, guiltified, whatever. So at that moment in time when they have received an unconditional love, an unconditional acceptance, they feel safe. They will told, you are safe, you are loved, you're accepted. And I'm so proud of you. It's because of you I'm here. It will make a whole lot of difference, because those words will be like, I don't know, call it, like the drops of water on a rock for millions of years. It will make an engravement of love and their own persona and their own subconsciousness, to the point it will never leave them. And at that moment in time, when they know they're not alone, they're safe, they're like accepted, you can move them in any trauma, and you just watch it happen. Because once you move them through any trauma, they know they're not alone anymore. They will go through anything. So if people, they will go through regression to reparent that child, and then go through regression through whatever trauma it is, they will not be re-traumatized anyway, because they've been traumatized their whole life. Whenever they put their head on that pillow, they remember something, they will be re-traumatized. Whenever they hear the sound of something that exploded, or they see something that resonates, it's a trigger. It's in most of these kind of things that will happen every day. You know, it's re-traumatizing them. It doesn't happen in the office with the client. It happens every single day, between four walls, under the shower, in the classroom, any time of the day. So basically, you're not re-traumatizing them. Actually, what is happening, you're giving them a shield, not a safe place, a shield that is apparent, that will defend them through all their traumas and oppressive life, even if they went through it through their regression timeline or whatever you call it. So this is how important it is. Reparent your own self. Give it the parent that it deserves. Give it that parent that requires to be there, present at any moment, at any time. And that child doesn't have to go through all those atrocities that their oddly programmed parents gave to them by not being there or just being there. Because sometimes they say, like, I wish I didn't have parents, because I don't think parents should be like that. I've read about parents, I've seen the parents of my friends, and they're not even close to that. Those parents, I don't know, maybe the devil just decided to let them out of hell, and then why me? And here we go to Eric Berne again, you know, like, why does it have to happen to me? So that child, that Beryl can talk more about, you know, transactional analysis than I do, but basically transactional analysis in the core of that, those ego states. And we use Fritz Perls Gestalt therapy in order to do that discussion. So basically, it doesn't come from outer space that people think it's something that comes from, I don't know, something that woo-woo. No, it's like it has a basis of science. It has a basis of researchers. So when we say inner child, it doesn't mean that we're going towards spirituality. An inner child has been worked with Eric Berne, with Fritz Perls. It has been worked with Jung. It has been worked with Freud. It has been worked with so many people, with Janet, with Charcot, with so many people. You know, like, and the history of psychology is filled with these. And if you go even back, further back in time, as we do in regression, further and further back in time, you could reach to Hippocrates and Plato and that self that. It has been there all the time. It doesn't have to be like a short midget with weird looking hair. No, it's you.
The basis of philosophy, isn't it? Who am I?
Yes.
Where am I going? What am I doing? You know?
Man, know thyself.
The Greeks sitting around in a circle talking about these great philosophical questions. Reminds me of a story, Daniel. I had a pilot come to me, and he was scared. He'd got to the point where when he was alone, his co-pilot had gone, he was having panic attacks, and he couldn't look out of the window because somebody was looking in. If he went to the company psychologist, human resources, they would have taken him off his job, and he would have lost his job, his housing, his kids' education, his visa for being in the country and everything. Okay. Luckily, his wife had done some training with me, an NLP, so he came to see me, and we did, bring up the feeling back to the first time. He was 5 years old, and it had been his first day at school. And Mum said, "You're a big boy now, so you get to sleep in your own room." She tucked him in, and she said, "I'm going to close the door. You're not to come. You're a big boy now. Don't come to Mummy's room because you've got to get a good night's sleep. You're going to school again tomorrow." Okay, so he got under the covers, and there was a bit of a wind outside, and it was a bit cold, and she closed the door. That was sign number one, because whenever his co-pilot closed the door and went out was when he started to have the feelings. So, okay, we'll follow on. And he could hear a tap, tap, tap on the window. Tap, 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 tap on the window. Now his little imagination mind is making out that there's ghosts and ghoulies and I don't know what out there. Tap, tap, tap. He hunkered down, crying and whimpering, looking at the door, but scared, because he was told, you're big boy now, responsible, you don't go out the door and ask for help. And help isn't gonna come because you, yeah, etc. So I had the little boy say, it's okay. Yeah, the bigger you can come in now because nothing happened that night. So bigger you can come in and tell you what bigger you knows. And I'm here to hold your hand as well, choose to. But just take a peek, just with one little eye, you can take a peek outside the covers and look at the window. Oh, scary, the curtains are moving. Okay, take another look. What are they moving because of? Oh, it's the wind. Okay, look again now. And what's happening? He said, oh, it's a twig. It was a twig from the tree, tap, tap, tapping on the window. But his mind, his imagination mind, there was somebody out there looking at him, watching him, etc. Okay, now, being the informed child, come back to the future. What have you learned from this? What had happened recently is, do you remember the Malaysian aircraft that went down? Yeah, and lots of stories going around about alien abductions and people looking in and being, it was just the time when conspiracy theories were really gaining hold. You know, there'd been little ones around, but this was a big one. And also a couple of weeks after that, a flight from Spain to Germany, a pilot had been left alone while the co-pilot went for a pee, I guess, closed the door, and the pilot drove the airplane into a mountain. Okay, so these things now happening had triggered that ISE, that initial sensitizing event. But now the informed child could go back to that natural child or inner child, whatever you choose to call it. It's just verbiage, isn't it, really? But that child feeling what he felt and imagining what he felt, and take another look. Oh, there's nothing at the window. So again, what's this to do with now? There's nothing out there. It's as it's always been. There's stars and whatever. And okay, so now what do you decide to do? Yeah. Okay, I decide to fly my plane as I always have and be fine. Okay, then I went through, cleared up any subsequent events. You could do this with EFT. You can do it with timeline therapy, with all sorts. The inner child just needs to be informed. That's all. Once he's got the date, let's face it, we all need data. Once we've got the data, the information, we can choose to look at it the way we did, or choice, of course, is everything in hypnosis, or choose to take new behaviors. And let's say his job, his life, his marriage, his everything, his status in a foreign country as a pilot. That's just one of many, many stories. The guy who couldn't walk, and he walks again. All sorts of things, because the child believes he can. But as I say to many of my clients, how much time, effort, and money are you prepared to put into something? You can do anything. I'm 73, but I know I can climb Everest. But how much time, effort, and money am I prepared to put into that? Oh, no, thank you very much. I'll stay a child on that one. But, you know, we need to be a child to preserve that us that was there, but be informed. Does that explain a lot of this? And it doesn't have to be with hypnosis. But I don't know whether crystals can do it, but it's the belief. If you know, look at that word belief. In the middle is that word lies. Beliefs are just the lies we tell ourselves. So what are the lies we've been telling ourselves since we were a child and took on these habits? That's all we're changing. But it's that word regression. And if you haven't been trained in, let's call it regression, I suppose we have to. What happens when people do? Some of you were on the call with Ali Campbell where I was doing parts therapy. She went into a past life. That's a regression. There's regression to the womb, to past lives and all sorts of things. If you haven't been trained, what do you do? If you're full of fear, what do you do? So get trained in it. Wendie.
Have a question from Nicola Dodd, and I'm probably going to direct this to Wendie. When would you not use regress to cause, Wendie?
When would you not use it? Well, everything is anchored to the client's therapeutic goal. So if a client comes to you and they want symptom management, then that's what you give them. You don't regress to cause. You just use your surface techniques to manage the symptoms. If a client comes to you with a performance issue, they want to improve their golf swing or their I don't know, I'm not into sports, but somebody comes in, or academic performance or something like that. Often surface techniques are very effective for that. However, I have had clients that came to me and through the process of just addressing the performance issue, they spontaneously stepped into a regression because the block, in fact, was emotional. So the place you want to use regression is when the client is presenting with an emotional issue, and because that's the key to resolving it. The regression is about resolving emotions, and those emotions are anchored to events earlier in life. When they walk into your office, they bring that feeling with them. Okay, and so something had to happen to cause them to feel that feeling. So what we want to do is find out where that feeling is coming from and resolve it where it got started. So how does this relate to parts? Well, we've got to ask ourselves, or rather inner child work, what is the inner child? What's an inner child? What are we working with? Well, an inner child is a part of the client. And we have many inner children. We don't just have one inner child. It's a misnomer. I'm gonna go heal my inner child. Well, which one? Because these internalized parts of ourselves are shaped by specific experiences and specific events in life. So in transactional analysis, we have 3 key parts that we work with, and this is really all you need to do parts work with regression. And that is that you work with the inner child part that is related to the presenting issue, and there may be more than one, which means that you may be dealing with more than one initial sensitizing event. But the event that caused that child to form in the first place is the event that we want to regress into. The second part that we work with are parent parts. Okay, because inner children are raised by people who model to them and who tell them, give them suggestions very early in life about how to be and how not to be. And children are great observers. They learn by observing what's going on in their environment, and they learn very quickly how to be and how not to be in order to survive. You have to understand that parts are shaped by our instinct for survival. We learn behaviors in order to cope with the situations in which we're in. Children lack the maturity to be able to make sense of their environment. They can't think critically. So the younger the child is, the more they have to borrow that critical faculty from the parent. And when you have a parent who is abusive or who is absent, or for some reason maybe has mental illness or is addicted to substances or something like that, then this is a contributor to what's shaping the child's perception of themselves, because parts shaped early in life form the foundation of our identity. So who am I? As Beryl said, this is the question we go through life asking ourselves, who am I? But the question is really, who am I in this? It's very specific to a situation. And so this is where triggering comes in. And as Daniel pointed out, we're regressing all the time. And it's when we get triggered, we go back emotionally to the event that caused that event, either consciously or unconsciously. So in NLP, Richard Bandler just said, regression is just memory. But it's stepping into the emotional content of the memory. It's not necessarily remembering the data or the facts of the event, but it's the emotional experience, which is why we want to use regression for emotional issues. The third part that we work with is the adult part. That's the conscious thinking part of the client that steps into your office and says, I'm done with this. I need you to help me get out of it. That's the part of the client that is going to do the inner child work. It's not something you do. You facilitate that for the client. And you do that by guiding that adult part, that grown-up part of the client, to be that inner parent to the child, as Daniel put out, to reparent themselves. And so this makes your initial session with the client very, very critical, because you need to identify whether or not that adult is actually prepared and has the information they need and the skills required to be a loving and accepting support for the child, their own inner child. If you've got a client that comes in and they've got a lot of self-hatred going on, there's a very good chance that they do not have any love for their inner child. They want to kill that little child inside of them that is screaming for help. And there's a reason for that. So it's probably not a wise decision to regress an adult that has a negative attitude toward their inner child into an event where the child is feeling abandoned or lost or traumatized in some way, because that adult doesn't have the skill necessary. So then that becomes the first step. And again, that's where your surface techniques can be very useful. You can use them to prepare the client to be that loving support and that parent, that reparenting facilitator for that wounded child. So those are the three parts that we work with. We need a strong and capable and willing grown up to be that support for the inner child. The inner child is a feeling part of the client that is responsible for the unwanted symptoms. The symptoms could be a behavior, they could be just an anxiety or a phobia. It could be an emotional response to situations in life. It could be some kind of negative thought pattern, which is always connected to emotional stuff. And then, of course, we have the parent, the inner parent. Now, parents are often responsible for stuff, in adult life, and we don't even realize that they put it there, and they don't realize it. So many of the issues that we work with, you take a grown-up back into the event and they'll go, is that it? Is that the cause of the problem? And it's because it's the reasoning and the logic of the child that, trying to make sense of a situation, and they make mistakes. So, a 2-year-old may not be able to factor everything in where a 50-year-old can certainly go, well, that's nonsense. That doesn't make any sense. But the problem is that if the parent who was supposed to be there to support the child wasn't there, or worse, the parent was the cause of the trauma in the first place, then that needs to be addressed. And so this is the internalized parent is the problem. So we have inner parents, and they, like the inner child, are very event specific. Now, when you've got something like sexual abuse in childhood, that tends not to be a one-time event. If it's at the hand of a parent, it's opportunity. And that means you're going to have a lot of reinforcement. There's going to be a lot of events that are compounding and compounding and compounding that initial trauma. The good news is that if we can find the first time, that's the event that came as a surprise. The child that has nothing in his or her experience to prepare her for that kind of adult behavior, which is unacceptable, but they don't know that. So it's totally unexpected. And what we can do is, if we can find that first event and remove the element of shock, the amount of surprise, and then we can do that informed child technique, which we go in and we prepare the child. This this is how it is with Uncle Fred. He's got a problem. You're not the problem. Yes, it's scary, but you're going to get through this. How do we know? Grown-ups here, bring in grown-up. Grown-up says, I made it through, and I get it. This is not fun stuff, but it doesn't need to be as bad as it was the first time, because the child had to deal with it alone. And you've already corrected that problem simply by bringing the adult part of the client into the situation with that wounded child. So this is what we're doing with parts work. We're healing the inner child. And the reason we want and need to do that is because when you have a wounded inner child, that inner child doesn't grow up. And so you end up with an adult who is wounded inside. They haven't resolved that disruption to the nervous system in the body, that disruption to their self-concept, their disruption to their expectations of how life is going to be, what to expect from life, what they deserve. So now you see we get all these identity issues that get wrapped into it, and it can get very complex. But it's not really complex if you're dealing with the initial sensitizing event, because the reason and logic of the child is very simple. And it's very literal as well. And so it's the easiest place to correct that, because if I'm sure you all know about talk therapy, right? And you know that you can talk until you're blue in the face to the client and say, you don't need to feel that way. Oh my gosh, that was well in the past. That's over. So you got hurt when you were 2. That's not a big deal. And the grown-up will say, yeah, I get that, but they still feel traumatized. They still feel abandoned. They still feel incapable of dealing with certain situations in daily life. And so what we want to do is give them that opportunity, the simplest opportunity, to heal that part of themselves that didn't get to grow up. So that's kind of the why and the what, and a little bit of the how behind the inner child work. The key to inner child work and the key to understanding when we want to regress and do the inner child work in a regression is, are we dealing with an uncomfortable emotion, a habituated uncomfortable emotion? And you can test that, right? When you're just doing the intake and say, well, is that a new feeling or is that an old familiar feeling? And the client will always tell you it's an old familiar feeling. And you say, well, when's the last time you felt that feeling? Oh, well, I felt it this morning, or I felt it last week. And what was going on when you felt that feeling? Well, I was with, Uncle Fred. And you say, well, and you can begin facilitating a regression without ever doing an induction. You can say, and would there be an earlier time that you ever felt that feeling that you're feeling right now? And you can amplify the feeling by increasing the focus. This is the induction. You don't have to say, and I want you to relax now and close your eyes. You can do it with the eyes open. Just say, okay, as you're feeling that feeling, notice where in your body you're feeling that feeling. That's the inner child communicating. So let's say we're dealing with a scared feeling. You can say to the client, what feeling are you feeling? They'll say, well, I'm feeling anxious. And you go, okay, where are you feeling that anxious feeling in your body? Now, anxiety tends to be an overall feeling. It's kind of pervasive, and it's not a good feeling to work with, because you need a targeted feeling to target the event that caused it. So say, well, go into the, into the core of your body and notice, where do you notice that feeling is the strongest? And what you're looking for is either the throat, the chest, or the gut. These are real emotions. And when the client focuses on this, oh, it's in my gut. It's in my gut. You see, that's right. That feeling. And when a client uses a word like tummy, you're already speaking to the inner child. You are not talking to a grown-up anymore. Watch their language, because the language will switch. If they get quiet, if their voice gets a little bit higher, you're talking to an inner child. They have already regressed emotionally, but they're not cognitively stepping into the event. And you can facilitate that very easily simply by asking the right questions. So this is the facilitation part of it. Ask the questions that are most immediately obvious. Like, where are you feeling that feeling? It's in my gut. Great, focus on that feeling. Is it a good feeling or a bad feeling? Oh, it's a bad feeling. Okay, describe that feeling to me. If it had a color, what would it be? If it had a shape, what would it be? If it had a temperature, what would it be? How big might it be? Size of a golf ball, size of a, size of a football, bigger? Is it inside the body, outside the body? You guys know all of this stuff, right? What you want to do is increase the focus on the feeling, because that's the inner child communicating. And as you increase the attention on the feeling, you are facilitating the induction. The client is focusing, they're narrowing their focus, their critical faculty is stepping aside, they're stepping into the emotion. And as they step into the emotion, you can ask that question. Is that a new feeling or is that an old familiar feeling? It's an old familiar feeling. Great. If that feeling had a name, what would it be? And they usually say, oh, I feel scared. And you say, great, focus on that scared feeling in your gut. So now you've got everything you need. You've named the feeling. It's scared. It's fear. You've identified it in the body. This is where children feel their feelings. They feel, well, we all feel our emotions in the body, but the younger the child is, the more physical they are, the more they process data physiologically. So if you're dealing with an infant, it's all going to be physical stuff. There's no point in saying, what time of the day is it to an infant? You want to know what's going on in their body, because that's what they're aware of. If you've ever regressed somebody into the womb, you know this. They don't know where they're at. They can't see anything, but they'll tell you it's warm. They'll tell you that I can hear this pulsing sound or this thumping sound. And so you want to focus on, is it a comfortable place to be or an uncomfortable place? Where are you feeling that in your body? How does that make you, what's that making you think? What do you think about that? What do you make of that? That's a good question to ask. What do you make of that? Because you can tap into the logic and reason of the client at that age. And so when you're dealing with the adult and you're doing that amplification technique of focusing on the feeling, and you can get them to name it and they've identified it in the body and they're really feeling it, you can ask them now, how strong might that feeling be? On a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is that feeling right now? Now, this is taking a SUD, a subjective unit of discomfort. If the client says it's 2, you cannot regress them. You need 7 or more. So you can ask them, and what would need to happen for that? Just tell them, we need that to be at least a 10. What would need to happen for that feeling to come up to a 10? And the client will tell you. And when they tell you, they're already imagining it happen. Okay. And now all you need to do is an amplification count. So if they tell you it's at a 5, you say 5. Great. There's the feeling. 5. It's a 5. Allowing it to come up to a 6 now. You feel the feeling. That feeling in your gut is getting stronger and stronger. 6, growing and expanding. It's getting more uncomfortable, but that's okay. That's what we want. This is your path to healing. 7, growing and expanding. 8, growing stronger and stronger. 9 and 10. First impression, how strong is that feeling now? It's a 10. Good. Focus on that feeling. As I count from 5 down to 1, your mind takes us back to an earlier event. So that's the conventional approach to regressing back. Or you got a client, they say, oh, it's a 10 or it's a 15. I've had clients tell me it's a 12. At that point you say, that's great. That's a good, strong emotion. Now tell me, what's an earlier time that you ever felt that feeling in your gut? And they will immediately regress to an earlier time. Now, that won't go to the ISE. That won't get you to the causal event, but it gets you closer to the ISE. And that's what we want. Also, it gives you what's called an SSE, which is a subsequent sensitizing event. It gives you a map, a timeline that you can track back on. So this gives you something to come back and do the cleanup when we want to take the child, heal the child, and grow it up, and we grow them up through the SSEs. So those are events you want to take note of. Another reason we want to take note of those SSEs is because other stuff gets added to the whole pattern, the whole package that's responsible for generating the symptoms. So if you've got a client that's got cancer, nobody gets cancer first. Okay, so their ISE might be some kind of a fear, but then other emotions will get added to that. So there could be sadness and there could be anger that's tied into that presenting issue. And so you will find those in the SSEs, and those are subsequent sensitizing events that also need to be cleaned up, because that child grew up developing these. It's kind of like, you got a wart and then you get another wart and you get another wart. And so you got to get that first one to get, to clean it out. And then you can take care of all the stuff that got added to it. Another advantage of doing the ISE, getting to that causal event, is that often those other things will take care of themselves, especially if you're dealing with a very simple issue that it only has one cause. Then those things that get added later tend to fall down because there's nothing to support them. Okay, I'm going to shut up now.
You're really interesting, and Beryl's just written in the comments why she calls herself an emotionally intelligence development specialist, because it is all about acting with that emotional intelligence. I wanted to share with you, Tanya is on this call, and Louise will know this lady I'm talking about. We went through similar situations last month where both of us had no idea that we had an outstanding parking ticket, and no letters from the council, nothing happened. Now with me, I kept my story private about it. I think Daniel knows about it, but I kept it very private. I was in my house clearing. I was doing my therapy room out. My brother was there plastering the wall. And next thing is a man in my kitchen dressed all in black with a mask on. I didn't know who he was. He had no ID on him. I felt I was dealing with a male intruder. In my mind, my son is returning from his father's with my very large dog and catastrophizing. I'm thinking the dog is going to attack him. Shay's going to have a meltdown. I'm going to lose the dog. I don't know what I'm going to do with Shay. In my head, I had to have this man out of my house. I didn't care what it was. He needed to go. And I pushed him. You would have been proud of me, guys, to be fair. I was like a bloody warrior. And out he went. He come back in. He refused to leave. He read these rights. He wouldn't show me this warrant for a car park ticket. I knew nothing over. And I started to react like a psychopath. It's the only way I can describe it, that I wanted him out of the house. And he was saying, I'm not going. I am now going to remove goods from your house to the value of the money he was demanding. And I'm like, this cannot happen. I have these visions of these TVs. It just got really out of hand. And in the end, I left the house and I broke down crying. And I mean, I haven't cried like that in a long, long time. Now, it was 2 weeks ago when I saw my friend who was a fabulous coach. She's just set up her own training school. She's Mrs. Glamour Puss. She's got it all together. And she put a similar situation happened to her, and she reacted in the same way because she was teaching clients on Zoom a technique called silent counseling. She was their teacher and mentor, and she reacted like this so all her students could see her. And this man stepped into her house, did the same thing. The mask was there, very frightening. And she sent me a message saying she's very open about her story. She was abused as a child. She's done incredible work on herself. She's taken great leaps in what she does in her career. In that moment, she said, I was like a psychopath. I was screaming at him to get out. She had pushed the door on him to get him out of the house. And in the end, she had £500 in cash to give him in the house. She was lucky to get rid of him. So even telling you that story, my heart is beating for her and for me. It was just horrible because there's your home, it's your castle. And these people are coming in and they've got more right in that moment than you have in the house, okay? And that's the way we both reacted, and we were giggling about it because when you go into forest, it's similar. There's you thinking you're all healed and you're all this kind of balanced person, and that one thing comes in to threaten you, bang. Beryl, what's your thoughts on that?
Unmute, Beryl.
Everything's about protection. It's back to our primal brain: fight, flight, freeze. Freeze is put up and shut up and do nothing. So you wanted to fight, you wanted to speak up, but you weren't being listened to. You walked away. Is that a pattern in your life, perhaps?
You know, what one thing related to
Always
that.
value in the quiet.
Probably, sorry, my mic was off. Probably, but it was getting out of hand. I wanted him to leave, and he was telling me no. I wanted him out of my house. It was my house, my property, and he had no right to be there, in my opinion. And at that point, when I told him I was going to appeal what he was giving me, he should have walked out. By law, he should have walked out, but he refused. And he made it started to become quite personal. That then wasn't about the situation. It was about me protecting, as you say, it was about me protecting my home, my child.
It was trespassing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it ancestral? No, we have these ancestors coming out. I wanted to kill him, basically. If my brother hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened, what the outcome would have been. But a friend rang and said, leave the house now.
Yes.
Leave.
And isn't it interesting that the base feeling, emotion here was fear. And we don't want to show our fear, so we show our anger. Anger, I'll be angry with you because I don't want you to see my fear. But actually the base emotion was fear.
Yeah, and she had the same reaction. We were giggling about it, and I thought, if I was in that more balanced place, I would have said to him, look, I am going to walk out. I have got this right to appeal. I am now going to walk out of the house and leave you here. It's up to you what you do from there, but this is what I'm doing. That's what I probably should have done, but it come from my boots, literally like a psychopath. That's all I can describe.
Transactional analysis, we go into our child or victim, we go into our parent or judge, or we can step into assertiveness. Yeah? And assertive is to say your truth, the right words at the right time to the right people. It's hard. Yeah? Especially when we're on the spot like that. So we go back to our behaviors, to our child.
Yeah, when you're threatened, you're in a situation of threat. That's clearly a situation of threat. Okay, it's a man wearing a mask who is threatening you. He is threatening you. Okay, so that's the right response is fear, because you are in a situation of danger and you're trying to process the information. So it's the correct response. It's a biological response to a perceived threat. How you then respond is really just based on learned responses. One person might scream and run away, another person might break down crying. I learned my own response to a similar situation, and that, like I just stood up and said, this is not happening, you're leaving now. It's just really depends, so this can take us back to that inner child as well, right? If that child was if you were beat down as a child, then maybe you would crumble.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you know something happened where it did take it back to where I was talking to a friend about it, and two memories come up of I told the truth, but I was telling the truth. And in this situation with this bailiff, I generally did not ever have a parking ticket. I never had a letter relating to it. It was the first I heard of it. So there was me being accused of something I knew I didn't do. I didn't react like that as a child. I just took it from my mum. I just shut up and took it. I didn't argue. I didn't say anything. Right. So to me, knowing now what I know, that was that perfect example of like, rah, coming out. Perhaps I should have come out then. Coming out within me, So yeah, and perhaps similar to my friend. I'll name her name, Sam. She's very open about it, but she said similar because she had that level of abuse when she was younger, but she never said anything.
Jacquelyn, I would say one thing related to that. If that happened with you, let's say you're just getting into a case study here, but basically, if we go into that and we say like you understood that something like that happened with you, and you informed that child that little Jacquelyn, she's safe. She has to stand for her own self, and you would have stood for your own self at home, and you kicked that man out. But the only difference, when you tell the story now, you will not feel that emotion and your heart wouldn't be pounding. Because one thing is for sure, when it comes to memories, when you're processing memories and long-term memories, we're talking about your subconscious. What is a memory? A memory is an event plus an emotion. A feeling, emotion, image, sensation, whatever. So basically, when you do that inner child work or informed child or whatever it is with regression to cause and healing that and knowing how to stand up for your own self, whenever you tell that story, you will have removed that emotion from it, so it will be only a story. It's like as if you're reading the story of World War One, where you're not even involved. It will be like history books, So basically, there are no emotions built in it. So now being having that heart pounding, telling that story, in my opinion, you are re-traumatizing yourself. I have to go back to the initial, subject. You are re-traumatizing yourself. So what should I do? Should I stop you, or should I continue with the therapy? So you regressed now. You just did, and like a spontaneous regression. You're telling me about everything. You're seeing all those images. You're feeling all the feelings, the images, the thoughts, the emotions, the sensations related to that event as you are speaking. The only thing you need to do is just stand there with your own self 5 minutes before you see that man and tell yourself that everything is going to be okay and change the perception.
Well, the good end to the story is here. So I was sharing that with you guys as an example of what happened to me. But what happened? Those people, they come back 2 weeks ago. But this time, two of them come back. And we looked out the window and we decided we didn't have to open the door. So we didn't. So they clamped my car outside the house, called the police, realised it was a civil offence, and I removed the clamp. So they didn't win after all. So now they've handed it back to Swansea, to the council. So they didn't win. I didn't lose control. I didn't shout. I just played it my way.
And this is what happened, because you took control over that child, all that emotion related to that event. So at that moment, you stepped in as a parent, as someone who has authority and responsible of what you're doing. You removed the clamp. And you didn't flinch even. You're just telling me the story as if you are proud of yourself. So basically, you went rebellious. And that's another part of another child. Because a child is rebellious. It's either rebellious or submissive. There's no in between. Whenever you are in a child situation, you are either rebellious or submissive. So that's why when Beryl was talking about, like the tone of voice, if they get higher and or lower, so basically it's related to that. One thing is very very interesting with regression to cause and these kind of things. This is the revivification of the situation. And people, they say, like, you're traumatizing the client because they're reliving their own emotions. But let me ask a question. When you are regressing someone into past life, which is recreational, and they go inside a traumatic event that happened 16,000 years ago when they were hit by a flying monkey. I don't know.
Coming soon.
Coming soon, yeah.
Yeah, true.
So was that re-traumatizing, yes or no? Why is it accepted in past life regression and it's not accepted in regression to cause therapy? It's still regression. You have spontaneous, you have directed, you have non-directed, and you have like past life regression. What I call it's regression. Sometimes a spontaneous regression could happen in a past life. So what happens with the past life regressionist? Does she or he, whatever, or it, doing that work, will be able to deal with that trauma and relieve that person? Or just they emerge and say, like, you see, you were King Tut when you were like 3 years old and they hit you with a spear in your head. And that's how you died. Whoa, what kind of amazing information is this? It's never about the why. It's always about, it's always about the how. It's not about the why. I'm not regressing someone to know why it is happening. I'm regressing that someone to see how should I get them out of it. This is the major thing about regression to cause therapy and the work with the inner child. What we're doing here, when we're talking about, like, if we go to Roy, if Roy Hunter was with us, we're not working with parts therapy here. We're talking with ego states. Parts therapy are a bunch of inner childs. Like inner children, excuse my French. So inner children on that, conference table, you're dealing with them and you're regressing each and every one of them to the first time they ever came, and if they came there for a good cause or not. Why they're there. why they are supposed to be there, did they ever offered help, and why that inner child, that is the creative inner child of you, is sitting in the corner over there and being suppressed. They don't want him to talk, or they don't want her to draw, or they don't want him to create something. So basically, these guys, a bunch of, you're just there to be the supervisor of a playground in a school of your own inner children, with some of them being the bullies, and you being that, I don't know, oddly programmed parent, that nothing is good enough for you, that none of them is being able to come out, and they're all being punished. So this is quite interesting. Re-traumatizing that child, you're doing it every single day on subconscious level. Re-traumatizing that client, that makes me, or any therapist, re-traumatizing that person. But to hell with it. When people say all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, how the heck am I re-traumatizing a client if they are self-hypnotized? If they are doing this to themselves, why should I bear the consequence of that? So basically, it's me letting them re-traumatize themselves than me being responsible. They're not re-traumatized. There's no re-traumatizing. When an reaction happens in the bed, it happens in the car. When they have a panic attack, it's a re-traumatizing. When they eat their fingernails, that's an abreaction. When they have an IBS crisis, I don't know, they have a migraine episode, they're re-traumatizing themselves again and again. It's like a bad habit that has been, there for a very long time. They tried every single way. So now, let's go back. Let's regress to that cause and see what happened there. We're not the bad people here. No one is bad. Not even the client or the therapist. It's only a misunderstanding of a past life regression, hooray, and a regression to cause, a woo-woo. I had a hand here, or bye-bye. I'm not sure.
Tamsin.
Yeah, Tamsin.
Hang on, I'm just going to get rid of my big hand, lower that. Okay. Hi. So in the work I've done working with people that have experienced extreme abuse, the business about a symptom of dis-ease coming up, a migraine, a distraction technique, alcoholism, whatever, is the distress flare from the subconscious. It's the wounded child or children seeking to get the attention of the client themselves and hopefully the therapist. So the migraine itself is, yes, it's traumatizing, but it's the alert system from the child that has not been heard. So this paranoia amongst the current trend in therapy, that it's terribly damaging to have the traumatic story told, is actually precisely what the inner child is trying to achieve by raising the red flag and saying there's something wrong here, help, here's my symptom of disease, my migraine, is to alert the fact that I'm not okay, and I never have been heard, and no one has ever listened to me and treated me with compassion or love, or so to me, that's these signals. A well-intentioned therapist could say, okay, let's work to teach coping strategies to try and reduce down that alert system, that signal. Let's try and do stuff to teach you how to manage your pain levels or whatever. And of course, underneath that is still the wounded child that has never been heard. So actually, it's the hearing of that child that brings the healing. And that's what you're offering to do. You're not trying to re-traumatize that child. That child has been there going, hi, hello, I'm not okay, for years, sometimes 50 years. I've worked with an 83-year-old war veteran, and we've cleared 60 years of PTSD doing this work, So I think the only thing I would say is, Nicole was asking, when would you not use regression to cause? And I would say great caution is required if you're going to go stamping into a regression of a severely traumatized child, where the adult self, as Wendie was saying, has not, you haven't gone through the process with that adult self for them to be able to parent their own child safely. So therefore, that's when the therapist steps in. But always, as a therapist, you should be a temporary measure of being that parenting role to teach the adult self how to do that safely. Because if you've got the adult self full of self-hatred, then yeah, Wendie says it's going to go horribly wrong. But if in that circumstance you go traipsing into a regression to a very severely abused child, traumatized child, then you risk triggering some very dangerous defensive or distraction technique measures. So self-harming, yeah, I mean, all sorts of different things that could happen, and that can be very dangerous for the client because they're not ready to know how to help themselves out of that response. So I would say tread very carefully in that circumstance. Yes. Even as the therapist, even as a very experienced therapist going in to be the parent for that traumatized child, what I've discovered is very much there'll be protective parts of the mind that will kick off if you try to reach that really traumatized child. And if you don't ask permission of those protective parts, then it can go very wrong.
You know, the permission, that's of essence, because sometimes if you don't do that, this is why you take permission. If you're working with part therapy, you should know that, you know, may I have the permission to speak to that part? Sometimes
Absolutely.
they will say no. Beryl, then Wendie.
And if you go straight into trying to reach that traumatized part without the permission of the protective parts, you know, you need to get them on board first to because they need reassurance that it's safe to actually, because this part has been overwhelming the client for years. When it's triggered, this is the part that overwhelms the client. Yeah. And when that overwhelm comes up to conscious awareness and can actually take over the person completely to the point of self-destructive behaviors, that can be very, very dangerous. So absolutely seeking permission. But what I'm saying this because a lot of people might not realize that, you know, I think it was Wendie wasn't talking about, let's be clear here, it's a misnomer, this inner child thing. There is not one inner child. There's not even necessarily just one 8-year-old that you're working with. There could be 15 8-year-olds that are waiting in the wings to speak to you as a therapist that you're not aware of. And people think, I've healed the 8-year-old. We're all sorted now. No. There could be hundreds of different parts. And I think that's something so important to state, because you can have a very basic concept of parts therapy, but not grasp the fact that this could go on and on and on. Like I think it was you, Daniel, was saying you could go through healing work with 20, 30, 40 different inner children, you know, with somebody.
Because
I know Beryl's waiting to speak. I want to add to that. Something happened to me a few months ago in a session where the client got very angry about something, and although I'd gone carefully, I literally had to put my hands up and say, that's fine. She wanted to lash out. She was lashing out in her thing. And I said, right, okay, put my hands up. I put my hands up and let's bash. And she did. And she bashed until she broke sobbing on the floor. But I realized when I left, that was a situation where it could have gone the other way for me, do you know? So yeah, I agree. And that was something that just came up spontaneously within her. So I know, sorry, Daniel, I cut you off then. How rude. But I noticed Beryl's waving to speak, so.
No, actually, I wanted to say something about the counter transference about that.
All right, okay.
Yeah, Beryl.
Who wants to go first then?
I use the parts a lot to have the parts go back to the ISE, and each part has an ISE. They split, you know. I love teaching parts, and I find that as well, you can sneak up on the regression and the inner child with EFT, for example. I don't want to do regression. I'm scared. You're not going to go there. Well, okay, we can do some EFT on that. And as the SUDs, some SUDs disappear, more SUDs come, subjective discomfort, and until the point where they're having what people call an abreaction. But people get scared of abreactions in hypnosis, but actually the abreaction is what is happening to them. Every time they think of that spider or they bite their nails or whatever, that is the abreaction that we want to get to, you know? So the thing is, I've been doing this for 40 odd years, you know, and I just see hypnotherapy watered down. I think now, if we went to Shellcott, we went to Mesmer, we went to Elman and whatever, we wouldn't be saying, don't work with epileptics and don't work with schizophrenics and don't do regression. They were pushed the barriers. You know, they said, let's go and find out. The answer is there. If you believe that the client has the script, the client has the knowledge that got them where they are and the knowledge to get out. They have the inner child, they have the informed child, they have all the knowledge. I actually believe they do all the work. And I see more and more people, hypnotherapists, thinking they do the work. They don't. The client is doing the work, creating the issue, and to let it go. But you can sneak up behind with EFT. Would you agree, Wendy? I know you've started using, I mean, I've been doing EFT since 2000. I have not had a headache since 2000. That's 22 years. 22 years without, I honestly have to ask people, how do you do it? Because I haven't had one. Because I did EFT on that. I had to make a presentation. I knew all my peers would be there. I mean, some of the great hypnotists, Jerry had said he was coming to my presentation. Oh, you know, I just had this migraine. It was my brain wanting to run away, flight or fight. And I just went and I just found myself going to all sorts of places, went down, did my presentation, got rid of all my fears of public presentations and running away from things. And it was a regression by myself. And, you know, so there's a tool you can give people to work on if they don't want to do regression with you. It's a very useful tool. But the answer is there. The client has the answer. And again, Mesmer, he wouldn't have said, oh, I can't work with an epileptic, I can't work with this, I can't. He would say, you sneak up on the problem. Let me find out. Remember that doctors have found, okay, I'm not advocating allopathic doctors for everything, but we do need them for a broken bone or sepsis or whatever we do on occasion need them. We can't fix a broken bone with hypnosis. I wouldn't want to anyway. Yeah, go and get the plaster put onto it or the pins put in or whatever. But we can deal with the emotions of doing that. Hey, me, I'm a disabled person, but I don't label myself that. I got rid of the emotional attachment. What do I never do this again? What do I never do that again? Oh, I can do it. I can do anything. Yeah, but I'll ask for help when I need it.
You talked about something really valuable there, Beryl, because when we look at regress to cause, people think it's a protocol you follow, and it isn't. And when you bring EFT into it, you can bring your eye movement into it. You can bring your havening into it. Tamsin, you teach kinetic, we used to teach kinetic shift in the accident. You might bring that into it. Do you know, it's something that it's not like you get an 8-point protocol to follow. As you can see from listening to the girls and Daniel talking, it's an extremely creative role you play. It's almost theatrical to some of us, you know. It's very much stepping into a role, and it's extremely creative, and it does come with, I would say, experience, excellent training, and knowing what you're doing. As Tamsin's just said, you know, Tamsin comes from a career, her background is in dealing with a lot of intense situations as well. And I know from being friends with Tamsin, a lot of her work is deep trauma based. It's what she does on a daily basis. And it's like, the more, like, if we had to have this conversation 2 years ago, Tamsin, we were completely different, weren't we? It's learning from the experience that you get, what it brings up. And I've just said something about that lady. I wouldn't like to be in that situation again, but no doubt I may be, do you know? Probably will be. But it's interesting to know with regress to cause, it's not a protocol as some people believe it to be.
Absolutely.
Dan, do you want to elaborate on that?
I would disagree. I am very, very systematic.
Yeah,
you think it's
I do
okay.
follow
Let me
a protocol.
Let me explain it a bit better then.
But no, let me finish. Okay. Yes, you bring your own authenticity and creativity into the process. But I think Tamsin raised a really good point when you mentioned post-traumatic stress disorder. That is like the extreme spectrum. Okay. But it's a very good model for studying the protocol, because if you understand the steps, then you know what to do next. That's the whole point. You know what to do next. So for example, all right, so I've got to plug my book. This is The Devil's Therapy. This is a 7-step, 3-phase protocol. This is how I do it. It's always the same 7 steps. It's always the same 3 phases. The first phase is setup. You might do the first 3 steps, which are the setup phase. You might do those in the first session. You might even move into the second phase in the first session, but it's all based on the client. And it's so their readiness. So if you've got a client who's got post-traumatic stress disorder, you could be working on setup for a number of sessions just to prepare them.
This is what I meant to say. It's such a kind of different approach that it can go off in many different tangents. That's what I meant. So it's not like when you do something, right, you do A, B, C, D, and that's it. You follow that order.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. You've got your
recipe.
I get it.
It's not a recipe. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because the client comes in with a box full of ingredients, and you've got to figure out how to use what they've given you. So if they're missing something in that box full of groceries, and you say, so we've got all these ingredients, and this is what we want to end up with. Oops. Oh, yeah, that's it. So you know where you want to get to. You first need to know where we're starting, and then you can identify how are we going to get there. And the thing with this type of work that we're doing, I don't even want to call it regression, because it's really just healing work. And that is that so we need to identify, where is the client right now? Where are we starting from? Where are we going to ship out from? And what do we have on board right now? And so they may not have everything that they need to take that journey. So you certainly don't want to weigh anchor and take off. You may have to spend some time preparing them to be ready. And I lean toward a very gentle approach with clients. There's one word that is always right here on my forehead: safety. Because as Beryl said, it's, we are hardwired for protection. That's the subconscious mind's prime directive. And so that needs to be our prime directive. And that is, make it safe for the client to take the next step. That's all you ever need to do. Now, this takes all the pressure off of the therapist. You don't need to figure it all out. You don't need to have a map to get there. You just need to know, what are the steps to get from point A to point Z, what steps need to be covered. And they're very logical steps, right? And so now you identify, where is the client now? What are they missing? What do they need to be able to take the next step? That's all you need. And once you have tooled them up, you take them to the next step, and then the next. And Beryl talked about EFT. I love EFT. I don't even call it EFT, because that's a whole recipe as well. Just tapping on the points in the body. These are tied in. There's 9 points in the body that are tied to the meridians in the nervous system of the body. And stimulating them has been shown to calm the energy system of the body. Calming the physical responses down is a good thing. It's a great trauma therapy. You can pinch the nail beds on the fingers. That will calm it's called toning the energy system. Do it when you're driving the car. Just pinch them. It calms the energy system of the body. Rubbing on these collarbone points is a great trauma release point. You can and it gives the client something to do. It's like, oh, this feels like it's too much. Great. Rub on those points and repeat after me. Give them auto suggestion to work with. Even though I'm feeling really stressed out right now, and I feel scared, and I don't think I can handle it, I'm okay. I'm here now. Bring them back into the present moment. Because the thing with post-traumatic stress disorder is that the client will regress spontaneously, and they will combine this reality with the past event. They cannot make the distinction. So it's called a flashback. And that can be very, very distressing, both for the client, because they don't know what's going on or where they're at. They're reliving it 3D in the moment now. And it's very distressing for the therapist, and can be dangerous for the therapist as well, especially if you're dealing with a war vet, right? They're bigger, they're stronger, and they could hurt you. So you don't want to trigger that kind of a response. You want to tool them up, get them ready, calm their system down, give them techniques that they can use, self-management techniques, use techniques to keep them in the present moment. Because when you do a regression, you use what's called split consciousness. The adult mind goes back to be with that inner child. So it's a split consciousness. The adult is the conscious thinking mind of the client now. If you lose that, you've got nothing to work with. And that's when the client can go into be overwhelmed with an abreaction because they're not present anymore. They don't have any resources. They literally step into being that inner child or being that soldier on the, in the middle of bombs going off around them or what have you. And it's all happening now. It's too real. You need to have that dual consciousness to be able to facilitate that. So the prep work is very, very important. You need that foundation. And then the releasing goes with the regression. So that's the second phase in the healing process. Once you've done the prep work, then you move on to the core work, which is regress, release, and you might release first. Because if the client has got too much energy, too much emotional stuff, they're afraid of their own feelings, you might want to focus on teaching them how to release some of those feelings. Prove to them that they can feel better and they won't be resistant to their own emotional responses. Then when you regress them back into the event, you get to that ISE, you can use the releasing techniques to release the internal pressure, because that's the problem. Tamsin, you put it so beautifully, is that emotion that's coming up, that unwanted response, is the inner child trying to get your attention. This is what Dr. John Sarno calls the symptom imperative. And it's when we don't listen to our emotions, we stuff them, we repress them, we put a lid on them, we ignore them, we go to the doctor, we get pills to help us put a lid on them better. And when those don't work, boy, what happens is we end up with these other nonsensical kind of symptoms, because it's that little kid tugging on the apron string saying, yeah, but I still got the problem. I need some help here. And so what we want to do is say, I hear you, I'm listening, I get it. There's so we use a phrase in regression. There's a feeling inside that you just don't like. That feeling has everything to do with those unwanted headaches, or that feeling has everything to do with that fear of spiders, or that feeling has everything to do with that relationship problem that you came here to see me about. And as you think about those things, notice that feeling that's coming up in your body right now. Where do you notice that feeling? Bang, that you've just said to that part of the client that's responsible for that unwanted feeling, speak to me, and it will speak through the body. So this is where Beryl was talking about EFT. I love it, because now you can start releasing it through the body. You start tapping on the body. This is also a confusional technique, because you get the client saying something and tapping and focusing on the feeling at the same time. It disrupts the conscious mind's ability to try and figure things out or shut it down. So it's just another one of those techniques, but you don't have to know tapping. I like it because it's simple. It's at your fingertips. You can use it anywhere, but you can get out a pillow and you can just say that, if the feeling is too big, give it a place to go. Put a pillow a nice firm pillow in the lap of the client and say, I'm going to teach you how to release that feeling in a safe way. And here's why we're going to do it. Let this arm here be the expression of the subconscious mind. Bring all that feeling down this arm, make a fist, bring that feeling into that fist. And I want you to pump is the key word. Pump that anger. Anger is a good feeling for pillows, by the way, because it's big and it's very threatening. Pump that anger into the pillow. Give it a place to go. The pillow becomes a target for the emotion. And so you can drain it off enough to get to reduce the resistance to allowing the feeling. So if you've got anger that's running at around 15, you need to get it down to around 10 before you start, taking the client back into a previous event, because they're already in overwhelm. Bring it down. So that's the key. The main problem in that we're dealing with is it's always two things at the same thing. One is not enough, and the other is too much. So often it's the feeling is too much, and therefore the child was overwhelmed. It overwhelmed their nervous system. It overwhelmed their ability to think clearly. It could be like a soldier on the battlefield. He's so overwhelmed with the energy that he can't think clearly, and now he feels out of control. And that compounds the problem. And the other side of that is not enough. I don't have the resources. I don't have enough support. I don't have enough, or it could be just a child that says, I'm not smart enough. But it's that lacking the resources, which could be just the support of a parent to help them make sense of the situation. Now, when you're dealing with PTSD, here's the interesting thing. I highly recommend a book I just posted, and that is The Body Bears the Burden, and is by a Dr. Robert Scaer, S-C-A-E-R. Highly recommend it. He uses the metaphor, he got it as well. He's both a neurologist and a psychotherapist. So he looks at trauma through two different lenses, and he runs a trauma center. And most of the trauma that they deal with in this center has to do with motor vehicle accidents. People get into crunches and they need to get therapy that's paid for by their insurance. And so they do have recipes, and they say, look, if you got whiplash, it's 6 weeks of therapy and then you're good to go. But something that he discovered was that a lot of people would do the 6 weeks of therapy and they'd be fine. Off they'd go, that they'd never have a recurrence of the distress from the accident. And then there were those anomalies, these outliers, who just, no matter what they did, they never got better. And these people would suffer. I had a neighbor that was like that. It was 2 years after he used to drive a bus, and he got in an accident. And 2 years later, he was still walking around with a cane and suffering horrific pain, and nothing could help. And he said, well, I've got these crushed vertebrae. Well, the thing is that a crushed vertebrae is painful when it happens, but it doesn't hurt after about 6 weeks. There shouldn't be any pain there because there's no nerves. And so this becomes and of course, these doctors don't recognize that what he's dealing with is a psychological issue. Well, what Dr. Scaer did was he took these two parts of his training together, neurology and psychotherapy, put them together and went, wait a minute, there's something going on here. So we started to kind of explore what was going on with these patients. And what he found was that the people who weren't getting any better had been traumatized in childhood. And what had happened was, when they got into the car accident, let's say it was a car accident, when they got into the car accident, it re-stimulated the trauma from the childhood event. And often it would get locked in, like with a whiplash. It might be that they were turning their head to look to see what was coming, and they couldn't see what was coming when they got hit. Right? So it would lock in there. And that was, kind of how the body part got chosen. But the trauma actually was rooted in childhood and was still unresolved. And so he came up with this lovely metaphor, and he called what we call the initial sensitizing event an event of kindling. And so if you think about it, if you've ever set a fire, everybody ever made a fire, gone camping, or, in the fireplace, what do? You just crumple up some paper and you put it down, then you put some little sticks on it, and then you put some bigger sticks on it, and then you stack some pieces of wood, and they've all got to be positioned just so. And then when it's time to light the fire, you just light the paper and poof, the whole thing just, if you're a good fire layer, it all just poof, the fire gets going. Well, he said that's what an ISE is, a kindling event. It sets up all the key pieces. And then what happens is, sometime later in life, like that car accident, for example, something happens that acts like a match, and it sets alight the kindling, and the whole thing blows up as symptoms. And so when you've got a client coming to you with some kind of physiological problem like whiplash that doesn't get cured, or maybe it's cancer, or maybe it's something else, but it's this you know, this annoying problem that just never goes away. It's because there's this trapped emotional content that has everything to do with that event of kindling. And so if you're dealing with PTSD, you're talking about a soldier, you absolutely want to find that event in childhood, because this is something else that he recognized, that not everybody who goes onto the battlefield and experiences the bombs dropping and their buddies dying next to them and the blood and gore and guts and all the rest, that we all saw that in the movies, right? So I can say that. So not everybody came back from the war incapacitated emotionally. Not everybody came back and turned to drugs. Not everybody came back and got addicted to alcohol. Not everybody came back and beat their wives, or, you know, or were just completely emotionally incapacitated. Some people just moved on and went back to life as usual. Those individuals who were just traumatized, PTSD diagnosis, they had trauma from childhood that kindled them. And when they landed on the battlefield, it all burst into flames. Make sense?
We have Beryl and Thompson.
Yeah.
That's the ISE.
Thank you, Wendie. Beryl now, and then Thompson.
There's something that I teach a lot of these, we call them advanced courses now. They should be an initial training, parts therapy and regression to cause and transactional analysis and things. They should be, instead of just spending hours and hours of reading scripts. Sorry, but you know, they should be there. It's therapy. And often I'm doing a demonstration and the client will, whoever the demo's client will say, don't like the word subject, burst into tears. And there'll be therapists there running forward with tissues. And I'm like, oh, leave the tissue. Because the tissue is what's happening. We're so used to dampening it down. Let the snot run. Let the tears flow. Because they are having their ab reaction. That's what we want to get to. That's the child crying. That's the inner child. You know, what's happening? You know, get to that feeling. So please, you can put a tissue on their lap. They can feel it if they choose to. They try and we're not cruel, but once they've got that tears out, once you've gotten and tackled that, they'll never cry about that ever again. That's an reaction of an inner child, aren't they?
Beryl,
Situation.
Absolutely spot on there, Beryl, with, you know, the thing about the tissues and rushing in with any surface level techniques to try and let's take away the pain of your headache and all these well-intentioned things that therapists can do for somebody. You are actually saying to that distressed, wounded child within that, go away, you're not allowed to have any response, you're going to dampen it all down, just like you just said. So all of those,
you know,
you've been there, Tamsin, when I've done a demo and people have done that, come forward with tissues, and I'm going,
and it's a very compassionate human response, and that's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
What we're saying is, though, that when you're actually therapist to client working with you know, I mean, this is the point, isn't it? I don't even like the labels of negative and positive emotions, because all emotions have a purpose for being there. So you know, if you get an angry outburst from a client, you know, or you've triggered something, like Jacquelyn said, I think, you know, she ended up with somebody who was really getting quite agitated, and you know, but then you're right on the money then, aren't you? You're right there, you're looking at, you know, so if you then at that point go, right, I know what things we can do, I can teach you calming techniques so you don't ever feel angry, and that part's going, but you're not listening to me, you're not like this, I'm here, this is my symptom of disease, this is my symptom of distress, you know, and so this is what we're trying to get to, that's the goal, that's where we want to be, you know. So everything like tissues and everything else, and all the techniques to try and calm down any of these socially unacceptable responses, you know, because we're not allowed to be angry, are we? We're not allowed to have outbursts, we're not allowed, you know, it's all the feelings of the child that was never allowed to express itself, you know. And in fact, in the work I do with a lot of people, the whole point is that as a child, it was never safe to have any emotional expression. If you express distress or anger, you got more hurt.
Be the brave hypnotist. Be the one that will go into the territories that the others won't go. I often say, when people say to me, well, how's hypnosis different from psychology and all the others said, the other things. I said, we like Heineken beer. We reach, that reach the parts that the other beers don't reach. We go and find the parts that the other therapists can't find. And a script ain't going to do that.
Do you know, I want to come back to the ab reaction, Beryl, to explain, because not everyone on here is a hypnotherapist. Some are listening because they want to decide they want a career in hypnosis. With the ab reaction, that a lot of people who know nothing about healing and hypnotherapy, they just know the mainstream counselling, where they are pushed the tissue on them and they are kind of made to stuff things back down. Explain to everybody what your ab reaction is. What is it? And why it's a very positive thing.
That's what others call it. To me, it is their normal response to whatever has happened in the past, and it's what they've been stuffing down with the tissue or by slapping cold water on their face or whatever. It's not an ab reaction to them, but it's become one of those mainstream words that, avoid ab reactions, avoid ab reactions. And that comes from the very maternal side of hypnosis. Let's be maternal. Take a long time, read scripts, do this maternal work. I'm sorry, but this is 2022 and people want results. They want to get over things. They came to you because they've tried all the other Reikis and whatever, the motherly things. They want to get this out. I work now a lot with dementia, Parkinson's, the things that you're told never to do. Because I like to go where, no man has trod sort of thing, Star Wars. So, Star Trek. So when my dementia clients are abreacting, which is seeing, hallucinating, doing this, they're actually going back to childhood. Let's ask more questions to find out what's going on. Let's respond to them like children. So when they say, there's a man at the window, there's a man at the window. Oh, no, there's no man at the window. Don't be silly. You're actually, like Wendie said, putting more kindling on the fire. You wouldn't say that to a child if a child said there's fairies at the bottom of the garden. You say, really? Tell me more. Tell me more.
Show me.
Show me.
Show me. That's what regression is. Show me.
The dementia clients that I work with, Parkinson's, their Lewy bodies and whatever. Tell me more. And let them express, get it out and say, yeah, I know. That's the man I asked to come and clean the windows. Yeah, he's gone now. Oh, okay. They've said their story, they've said their bit, you've listened, and it usually goes away. It's very similar work, isn't it, Wendie? Yeah.
I'll add, there's a time for that. See, notice what she just did. There's a time for that maternal, and there's a time for the assertive. So the assertive is, there's that feeling. That feeling's allowed to be there. Come on, show me where that feeling's coming from. And then when the feeling has been faced, as you would like with a bad dream, you face the monster in the dream, it loses its power, and then you use the maternal, and you feel so much better now, don't you? And notice you did that. You did that. You faced your biggest fear, and now everything changes for the better.
Yeah.
Bring in that maternal. It's very effective for a cleanup routine. I want to add too, you were talking about tissues, and tissues can be used as a maternal approach. If a client is weeping very quietly, often you'll get this where they've found something very tender and they're feeling some tender emotions. Don't give them the tissue, take the tissue out and daub their cheek with the tissue and say, there, you get that out. You're going to feel so good.
That's the tough little soldier. You've been a tough little soldier all your life.
Yeah. You get that out. You're going to feel so good.
Never winning.
Yeah, you can use a little bit of this kind of a toy. There. Yeah, you're allowed to you let that cry come out. That's been stuck inside a long time.
It's not stuffing it, it's letting it come out.
Yeah.
Back to your question, Jacquelyn, ab reaction. that's what others use. I don't. It's like, yay, we got there. We're getting a reaction. Because what I'm teaching my clients is I can't control anything out there. Tsunamis, hurricanes, other people, situations, events. I can't control any of that. The only thing I can do is control my reaction to it. When I can no longer control my reaction to it, am I having an abreaction? No, it is a reaction. I'm not going to judge it negatively.
It's a normal reaction to proper practice an abnormal situation in their life, you know?
It's a pattern, it's a habit. How you've always done it until you choose.
You know,
I think Tamsin's got a hand up, darling, of you.
So change the movie. I'm in a movie I don't like. What do? Walk out, change the movie. Tamsin, yeah.
I was just saying what Beryl was saying there about the maternal thing, Wendie saying that obviously the maternal thing has its place. Of course it does. The point is that you're trying to reach to the wounded child and show compassion and a maternal instinct towards that wounded child. What you don't want to do is put that onto the conscious adult self so that it suppresses the inner child that's been trying to reach through. So if you know, and with experience and intuition as a therapist, you know when you're actually able, you're speaking and the inner child can hear you, and you're working with that aspect of the person. That's the point. And then of course, if you're working and you know that it's the 5-year-old wounded child that's listening to you, then you're not going to go, no, you can't have any tissues. You're not going to do that. Obviously.
You'll get a lolly later.
The worst is when you tell them, give me back that tissue. You don't need that.
Because
toughen up, and go back to your stutter.
That's right, Daniel, because what has that inner child been told all their life, probably?
Toughen up.
Shut up.
Don't cry. Man, don't cry.
A point I wanted to make there. A lot of us, I don't know about you guys, but most as children, we are told to shut up and sit in the corner and shut up when adults are talking, was something my mother would say to me. So there you've got this child who is expecting to be told to shut up, and then you're going, it's okay. Tell me.
And the point is that with parts work, and I don't like the term parts, I haven't come across anything that really, to me, sums up what we're working with here, because parts, ego states, whatever that, we are all a plural mind. We all have multiple ages of ourselves, and they exist as a whole in their own right. They have, if you work with somebody on these levels, the part will say that they have their own body, they have their own feelings, they are carrying their own. That's why we were talking about body work. I work with veterans a lot, and you can have a veteran that's on a conscious level is aware of having terrible pain in their shoulder, and there's no medical reason why it's there, etc. But you go back and you find that the child part within is carrying something from when their dad broke their arm when they were 5. You clear that and you heal that, and then miraculously the shoulder pain of the 50-year-old veteran disappears. So but what I had my hand up originally ages ago was to say to people who may not be so familiar with parts therapy work or this kind of inner child work, is that very often I've found that the inner child that you reach in the therapy is completely unaware of the adult self. Completely unaware. They're absolutely literally stuck in time. They are frozen in time to the point where they were, and they're experiencing that trauma in real time. I think Beryl was saying about we are the videos that we play in our mind. That child self is experiencing that trauma continuously. They are frozen in time, and so that's why it's so urgent for that inner child to be trying to reach the conscious self to say help, because it's going on for them. They are still stuck in it. And if you ask these inner children where they are, they'll be in the room where they were abused, they'll be in the bed that they were abused in, they'll be in some dark place, right? And even just you reaching in and offering to help them to get out of there, it's going to do huge healing for that child. But often that doesn't feel safe either, because they've been told they're not allowed to have a voice, they're not allowed to have an opinion, they're not allowed to move, they're not allowed to say anything, and they don't deserve to be helped. And so you have to do all of that work very carefully with the inner child. And also, of course, as I think we've already touched on, parts of that person can take on beliefs of their abusers or the perpetrators and start to attack self So actually, not only have you got parts of that person who are trying to shut up that wounded part because they're saying the exact same things the abusers would say to their own self, you know, be quiet, shut up, big boys don't cry, that kind of stuff. But also that the part that you're trying to reach is terrified of getting in trouble for speaking up.
You know,
Is another thing that can be
this is
going
why,
on.
Tamsin, is very important to tell that person, give yourself permission and allow yourself to feel it. So
Yeah.
feel it so you can heal it. It's quite important to give yourself permission to
Yeah.
just, because sometimes we don't give ourselves the permission. And when you say give yourself permission, it's just give that child permission to feel that wound, to cry it out, to reach for help and give them whatever they need. You know, at that moment in time, they wanted support, they didn't find it. So ask that child, what do you need? And that's, as you said, that child is not aware of that adult. It's stuck there in that, you know, playground, being bullied in that dark room, and where the mom, you know, I had one person that had been stuck in an old washing machine because the mom used to go out and she used to put him and his brother in the washing machine, lock them in the washing machine to go out. You know, these old washing machine, you fill them from the top, you know, with the, so basically that feeling of being stuck, you know, in that time, give yourself permission to let go, give yourself permission to cry it out.
But again,
Now you have, so basically that allowing yourself to let go, that cathartic release, if we were gonna go Freudian again, but that's very important. What should I say if they're crying out loud? What should I say? Is that an abreaction or is it a release? What is it? It's abnormal to me. We call it an abreaction, as an abnormal reaction. It's abnormal to me. For them, it's normal. They've been living with it for the last decade. So why should I call it an abnormal reaction? What is normal to me, it's not normal to them, and vice versa. What is normal to them, they've been in anxiety for their whole life. They've been in like traumatic events for their whole life, just repeating and rewinding that movie in their mind on and on and on and on. And now when I saw that reaction on them, I call it abnormal. Who am I to tell them it's an abnormal reaction?
No, it's
It's
a
like,
coping strategy.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like when
It's
you
a
see
coping
a
strategy.
catatonic person in a mental asylum where you, and you go there, you want to wake them up. They locked themselves in that place. They don't want to go back to that trauma. They're catatonic for a reason. You don't call them not normal. I don't think your word is normal when they have massacred their whole family in front of them. So they went catatonic. They don't want to deal with the world. So bring them back to the world. It's just like killing them again. So people, they don't understand, you know, these terms. They use them without knowing what is behind it. Abreaction.
And the
Okay, let
people
it be.
don't do regression and inner child work because we don't use them.
Yeah.
They accuse us of doing it because they don't do it.
Yeah,
And
because they, you know, the problem is, it's not they don't do it. It's because they do it wrong. That's the issue, and it's so simple to be done. The only thing you don't need weak knees. You just need to be like ballsy. You need to be just tough, not tough in like a tough kind of. You're not going to break anyone. You need to know that there's nothing you can do that can harm them more than being harmed on the inner side. They're being harmed on and on and on and on. It's like whoever drank the whole ocean will not be choked with a drop of water now. It's not the time for it. So why not? Why not?
And you know, I don't know about you guys that work in regression, when you talk to someone about it and they come back and they know more, the client knows more than you about it. They are convinced that they can't face it. They're not going to go, and therefore regression is too dangerous. And therefore you're the lunatic for offering it. Basically, they always know more than you. When we come up against those situations, we've lost Val Joff. Is not on this call. Is she gone? Is she? Val's gone. It's a shame because Val's got like 20 odd years experience behind her working with addictions. She's got some wonderful experiences to share, but I can't see her. Can you, Val? Are you here? She must have nipped off. But how many of you that are working, give me a hand or comment that actually work with regression with their clients. Give me a little Lee, Nicole, yes. Beryl, yes. I know. Tams, I know, yeah. So only a few of you then. For those of you who are not working with it, do you have anything that you've heard or you feel about it that you'd like to write in the chat or mute yourself and speak, that you have a question for us on it that you feel is perhaps not something you would wish to be involved in, or too frightened, not got the confidence? Have we made it sound more exciting for you this evening? Lisa's got a question. Do you want to mute yourself, my darling?
It's not so much a question, but I think, as I did write in the note to say, I think this is the bit that's missing for me. Yeah. Is that I've been working in mental health, substance misuse for 27 years and not gone down the hypnotherapy route. Always stayed within like the holistic therapies and really built on my talking therapy training and experiences, you know, and development. And it's like you get so far and then you get all these people coming in and it's like a revolving doors that they go so far and they'll back off completely. And then, you know, sort of they'll hide away from all these feelings and everything, and you know exactly what's needed. But I've not got, even though, you know, sort of I do some regression work in a spiritual way, not from what you've been talking about tonight, but I know is that I take them that far and I can see this bit, but I haven't got that bit that's in the middle that you know, a lot of you have. And this is why I wanted to have a look at this tonight, Jack, because I said to you tonight is that, you know, this is, I think is what I've been waiting for. And like, there's been loads of hypnotherapy aspects that have come through my life over the last 20 odd years. But when you spoke about this, I was just like, that's it. That's what I need to do. So that's why I wanted to tune in tonight.
And I'm not.
Listen to it. And so much of it resonated with me.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I just feel.
And sorry, go on. I again, it's not to poo-poo other people, but I do see a lot of people on Facebook who are newly qualified. No, I've been doing therapy long, and they've suddenly got the hypnosis diploma to teach. Absolutely
scares the
pants. No, I know, and it's no disrespect because they think they've been taught. They think they've got
and
this.
I think Wendie, right at the very beginning of tonight, when Wendie said about mopping up things for people, is that I feel as if I've spent the last like 15 years doing that, and so much of it has resonated with me, but I haven't been able to find that missing bit until tonight. So I am so excited to try and do something to pull all of it together, because I know that it's going to make a real difference to a lot of the people that I'm supporting, you know. And I love the tissue bit as well. Is that, you know, I was teaching Reiki on the weekend and somebody had this massive shift of energy and they burst into tears. And one of the ladies looked at me as if to say, well, why haven't you rushed to give it a touch and give it a tissue? And I was like, I'm appreciating this is her space, is to release things, you know. And I was actually taught that from a counselling perspective, is that not to go with the tissues and mop up, because that says more about the therapist saying, there, I want you to stop now because I'm not comfortable with you crying. So, you know, sort of, so I can only just thank you. It's just like amazing tonight. I've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it's like Beryl have said, and Tamsin and Wendie that have always instilled this in us, is like you have to have the balls on the balls.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? to kind of go there, and it's only by getting that correct training and having the confidence in yourself. And then we learn through experience of getting there. Like I said, me and Tams, if we did this conversation a couple of years ago, to listen to us talk now is completely different, isn't it, to what we would have been speaking a few years ago. So it's like anything in life, you know, you start off as your role as an infant, you progress to a toddler, then you're kind of a parent in your role, and then you go on to be a grandmother and a great grandmother in your role. So you then become the leading, not authority, but you become the one to look back and bring the younglings along, you know, to teach them the correct ways. And as Wendie says, true hypnosis does seem to be going out the window faster than a deflated balloon.
Jacquelyn, there's sorry, I have to interrupt something about hypnosis and hypnotherapy. Basically, hypnosis is no important to us than a cat to a cardboard box, maybe. This is something like that. You're talking about hypnotherapy. It's not only hypnosis. We're talking about therapy in the state of hypnosis, if you can call it a state. So basically, know what kind of state you need to what kind of therapy you're doing. So basically, if you don't know how to put people and test that level of deep somnambulistic state, your regression to cause work will be out of that window. You will be doing surface things. Sometimes they go deep. Sometimes they are so highly emotional, so fixed on something like on unconscious level, they're so flooded. You can do that work without any inductions. But really, you need to study, understand the components of a hypnotic induction, and then you mix and match. There is no way you cannot hypnotize a person. Everybody is hypnotizable if they have a double-digit IQ and they're not dead and maybe they're not robots. But basically, yeah, well, I'm quite doubting the robots, but dead, I'm sure. So basically, it's understanding the concept of hypnotherapy rather than hypnosis. Hypnosis on its own, it's like having a sandwich with nothing inside it. That's it. Actually, a sandwich could be filling a cardboard box with nothing inside it. It's a box. So I
It can
don't
be a
know.
nice experience of a progressive muscle relaxation. It can be a very pleasant experience for those who might be in a bit of a state. It can be,
Yeah,
as you say,
your reason using it is to relax people.
exactly.
So it's a hypnosis state to relax people. So basically, that's the relaxing part put in the hypnosis. It's like you know what I mean. Hypnosis on its own, that's nothing. Really nothing.
People don't pay for hypnosis. They pay
Exactly.
for results.
Paper results.
Exactly.
Hypnosis gives us access to the part of the mind that holds on to our memories and emotions. If you are only working with the conscious thinking mind, you may have breakthroughs where the subconscious mind pokes its little head up and says, hello, I need some help here. But most of the time, the conscious mind is too conditioned to shoving it back down. So the feeling will come up, that inner child will be screaming for help. Yes, you get me, please help me. And the conscious mind says, shut up, kid, I'm not listening to you. And that is the coping strategy. Keep it down. Don't talk, don't feel, don't be. And so what we do is basically we bypass the critical faculty of the mind, which is the thinking part of the mind. We ask it to cooperate by taking a place in the background. So we don't want it analyzing and thinking and trying to figure anything out. We want it to just be passively there as a spectator in the bleachers, watching what's going on. And then we invite the subconscious mind to play show me what's really going on here. And it will, if you have sufficient rapport. And so that's the setup. That's the prep work. That's the making sure that you have sufficient trust in the therapeutic relationship. That's ensuring that the client has the resources they need to be able to do the work because you can't do it for them. And that's ensuring that there is a readiness and a willingness and a capability to go where you need to go to get the healing so that you can deliver on those results that you're promising. And my goal is always to get a lasting result. I don't want to see a client over and over and over again for years on end, because the world is full of people needing help. I want to get them in, get the work done, test the results to make sure that they're going to stick, and then move on to the next person that needs help.
I'm going to explain you. Lisa said then, you want to give them a cutch. You're probably thinking, what's Sean about? A cutch is a cuddle in Welsh. It's Welsh for cuddle. So you've been educated there. Thank you, Lisa. So only the Welsh can cutch, see you there. Yeah, so you can all see. Tams, you can see. You can talk in the box. Yeah. Okay. So you've had a lot of information tonight given to you. Has anybody you here who's not trained in regression therapy have any questions that you probably would like more clarification on before we wrap this up? Because we've been on for over 2 hours. See, it's fascinating, isn't it? Isn't it? We could talk all night. I know. If I had a bottle of gin, we would be talking all night. Trust me. As Beryl sips or other. So has anybody got, you've been a bit quiet. Has any of you got any question? Beryl's mentioned that She's going to be teaching regression next month. If you're in the UK Women in Hypnosis, we share everything in that group with the UK women. Wendie's in it as well. Daniel is going to convert into Daniela. We will add you in. We can draw a pink wig in him or something, girls. We can bring him in. And I can add you in. Oh, I'm Pat. We've got another Mary. We've got Pat.
Oh,
And then we got
Daniel,
Nazim.
just change your pronouns and you're in.
Yeah. Identify as a woman and you'll be fine. Nazim, I'm Pat. I have to now let you in. I can't deny you if I like, you know. So yeah.
Daniel, you just put in another LE.
LE. I was going to say it. You know, I was going to put an LE. You know, I would sacrifice that to be with you, ladies. So.
Well, we had a funny conversation the other day. One of my friends, Stan, and me from Swansea, we often get called homophobe. I don't know why, mine because he's gay, and my best friends are gay, but we often get called homophobes for whatever reason. And we were sitting in the lab and a giggle about the pre-op transgender movement today, and he said, "I'm not being rude, Jacquelyn." He's 62 now, and he's ex-veteran. He said, "I'm not being rude." He said, "But when me and you were younger, there wasn't they called cross-dressers?" I said, "Yes, they were." He said, "But it's all we knew." He said, "We wasn't being politically incorrect. That was the terminology for our era." And I was like, "Yeah, we'll save that conversation for another day, though." Anyway.
So basically, that's the inner child now talking. At the count of 3, whoever has their eyes closed and they feel relaxed, they're coming back with so much happiness and feeling good. 1, 2, 3, open your eyes, feel good. Because so many people are, you know, they just have, you know, having an app behind their names on the in here. So I don't know if there aren't any questions anymore. I would say thank you from my side. We're planning a training. I don't know, September was it, Jacquelyn?
Yeah, we've got Daniel's coming up, but Daniel's is going to be the whole diploma from start to finish, from beginners, intermediate through to advanced. It's going to be over 3 months.
We have also. Yeah, we have.
I have got a page for it. Me and Dan have set up a page for it, which I will be sharing in the Hypnotic Woman. And if any of you follow me on Facebook, I'll write my name in the comments again. Unusual way I spelled Jacquelyn, but that certification, I know Daniel will speak to Beryl about that, but it's got 3 different accreditations to it. Somebody asked me, is it accredited? It's got 3 different certificates you'll be getting. We've also got Wendie's books, which are fantastic, which is The Devil's Therapy, Ditch the Script. I think Nicola Dodd's got these in her Amazon basket through the thing. And the third, what's the third one you wrote? Radical Healing, which is a brilliant one. I've finished Devil's Therapy. That's amazing. You keep going back over that.
Good job.
We've also got, those are 3 books from Wendie, but we've also got a fantastic book by Beryl Comar called Hypnotic. And it's not just about teeth. It's an incredibly deep book as well, which you will learn a lot of what we call our traditional hypnosis. There is some great, I know we talk about script, you have got the grey room script is in it as well, isn't there? The famous grey room script.
Yeah, regression to cause, all the steps are in there.
Stuff are in there as well, you know. So I can't say enough how lucky you've been tonight to be on this call with, as me and Danny like to call them, our fairy godmothers. Right, excuse. I am trying to add my Facebook link to you all, so I can't really find how to get it into the group. Shannon says I can't call myself a hypnotherapist in NC. I know it's you've got so many different rules over there, haven't you, with the licensing? Beryl can help. Beryl knows a lot about that because did a lot of her training in America.
Yeah, well, just do what Beryl does. You're an emotional intelligence specialist.
Yeah. Bear with me, keep talking. I'm trying to get onto my messenger so I can copy and paste my Facebook link for you all. It's not letting me do it here on message.
Let's see if I can get it.
I'm trying to.
Okay, what's the name of the group again? Jacquelyn?
Okay,
it's mine. I'm trying to copy my link.
Oh, okay. You got it?
I think so. I don't think it's letting me.
Isn't it UK Women Hypnotists?
Yeah, I got it.
Women in Hypnosis it is. So I'm trying to.
I got it.
Have you got it? So you can send it in.
There you go. There you go.
I cannot call myself Danielle unless I'm non-binary.
Be binary for a while.
Be bipolar for.
1 hour a day might be good for you, Daniel.
I am
I'll just
binary.
call you Danny. It works either way.
Just being binary, like zeros and ones and these kind of binary things. I'm too much technical, I know.
I posted links to my website and to my book as well. If anyone's interested in that, there's a free course there. If you go to the landing page, you can sign up for my my free mini course.
And that's my Facebook page. And actually, there's a link to my training on Wendie's page.
Oh, there is too. I forgot about that. Just a minute, I'll get it.
I am trying so hard to. Why can't I do this?
There you are. All right, and this one here is Daniel's course.
Oh, I can't do it. I can't see it.
And that's Beryl's with a link.
Oh, right. There's a few that's been right. I'm going to prove you all now. Come in. Here we are, darlings. Right. Tanya in, Rabina's in, Lisa's in, and Sharon. I've added you all in, okay, to the UK Women Hypnosis. Right. Right. So what have I missed as I've been faffing around here? We were talking about hypnodontics. We've got Beryl's page hypnodontics. We've got Wendie, the Tribe of Healers, and you've got Daniel. So we have got a fantastic course coming up with Daniel in September, where I'm going to be his glamorous assistant. Isn't that right, Daniel? We've got Beryl, who's coming up with a regression course next month. All these will be in the UK Hypnosis, and we've also got Beryl's page of hypnodontics. We've mentioned some great resources coming from Wendie and Beryl in the terms of things you can read, books. Remember those things? With Beryl's, Wendie's written 3 books: The Devil's Therapy, Ditch the Script, and Radical Healing. And we've got Beryl's action-packed book, Hypnodontics, which is by the side of my bed, actually, and The Devil's Therapy. And I got Paul Gilbert's The Compassionate Mind. I love reading that as well. So you've got a lot of different links we've sent in tonight with audiobooks. I put Alice Miller's book in. I put Alice Miller's audiobook for free in there for you, which she does a lot on the wounded inner child. I think I've shared Vessel Van Dorkey's The Body Keeps Score. So we've kind of overwhelmed you now with things you can.
Oh, and anything by Gabor Mate.
Gabor Mate.
Just put his name in there. Anything, everything. Buy all of his books.
Absolutely.
He's also got heart-centered healing courses online. Fabulous.
There, you love him, don't you?
Fabulous. Yeah. Top
He
shelf.
always looks so sad when I listen to him, though. Doesn't he?
He is.
That beautiful child from Hungary. I just keep hearing his story, and he's just so researched. And him and Jordan, I keep thinking, what's going to happen with him and Jordan Peterson Go? Because they've got all this research, haven't they? And if you don't follow one guy who's my favourite, but he's really ugly, ladies, I will warn you, really ugly and hard to look at, is Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's a beast. He brings glamour to neuroscience, he really does. So he does a lot of great things, which he talks about the brain, what's going on in the brain. It's really interesting, really. Dr. Andrew Huberman.
Huberman.
Yeah, and you can find him on YouTube called The Hub. And he does these free 2-hour, 2.5-hour podcasts on various subjects, trauma. He actually said, who do you want to hear on my show next? And I'm like, get Wendie and Beryl on there. Because he loves hypnotherapy. He's a great advocate for hypnotherapy. He's yet to present a podcast on hypnotherapy and the neuroscience behind it. So maybe, girls, you can reach out to him. He's got millions of followers, honestly. He is lovely. But he is ugly, I will warn you.
Yeah, he's real hard to look at.
He's really difficult, yeah, I know. Not as good looking as our Pat, Daniel, and of course Nazim, obviously. The throbs of hypnosis here. Right, anyway, so before we sign off then, Jordan Peterson, AK Father Fathers, you need to catch up what you can using your therapy. I love Jordan Peterson. He can turn his research covers a vast amount of areas as well, doesn't it? Do you know, he does cover a lot. So anyway, we've gone off at a few tangents now, haven't we? So have you got any questions before I end the call then, everybody?
Just nice to see everybody and catch you with what Tamsin's doing and seeing how, wow, the changes and how you've evolved. It's fantastic. Well done.
You know what, Beryl, though, I say very humbly that I learn everything I can from every client I see.
True.
And I'm very privileged to be, I'm very honoured to work with every single person I work with.
No, that's true. Do you know my tutor, he's not, you don't see him on the circuit, he has retired now. And he was taught by a guy called Joe Keaton. Now, Beryl, I don't know if you know Joe Keaton. I've heard of his work. Has anyone heard of Joe Keaton? No, incredible guy. I think he died in 2006. And his wife's gone on now to marry someone else, but she still keeps his name. And she's got in touch and said if anybody wants any of his books, she's got a lot on her archives. But he's wrote incredible work on regression. But no one seems to have heard of him. But my tutor did say when he taught me, it was 13 or 14 years ago when I qualified, he said, I nearly quit hypnosis. I thought I was going to be crap at it, so I nearly quit it after 3 months. And he called me in and he said, I'm going to say to you now, you've got more personality in your little finger than these lot in the whole class. Do not quit. He said, I'm telling you now. He said, no, I'm going to train you, absorb it like a sponge. He said, because you will see when you go on to do hypnosis, everything I tell you, you will see to be true. And he taught us wonderfully in hypnoanalysis. He was a wonderful guy. It's a shame he hasn't written books. And he's right, and I hear his voice even now. He said, and he always said, doesn't matter what book you read, your client will always be your best textbook you'll ever read. And I thought, yeah, it's, you know, it's true. So anyway, so no more questions of everyone then. Daniel wants to dance. Okay, then, so we'll call that a wrap then, guys.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
everyone.
everyone. And thanks for putting this together, Jacquelyn.
Are you welcome?
Yeah.
If anyone wants to reach out and ask any questions, me and Daniel, you've seen our faces, Beryl and Wendy, and Tams. I'm gonna name Tams into because she's wonderful as well. You know, she's got some great experiences to share. So yeah. Anyway, okay then all.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
See you later. Bye all. Bye.
Bye-bye. See you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.